Welcome to Reframe Your Mindset for Success. With me today is Caroline. How are you today, Caroline?
I'm great, thank you, Paul. And you?
Yeah, really good, really good. Enjoying the sunshine, are you?
Oh, I love it. Actually, I've just been on the beach this morning with the dogs, and yeah, I find it so energizing, the good weather. It's just so lovely.
It is nice to have the sunshine this year, especially after all the rain we had last year. And what have you been up to this week? Have you been up to much?
Well, on Monday, what day is it? It's Wednesday. On Monday, I was at Liverpool John Moores University, mentoring and coaching the final year business students through their live business consultancy projects.
Yeah.
And yesterday, gosh, you know what? Every day just it becomes a blur. But yesterday was primarily working on a project for a large client over in Liverpool. So
Okay.
something different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and today I'm with yourself. And yeah, I've also been coaching some individual clients this week as well, in between all of that.
In between all of that, great stuff. So busy week, always good, always good. So as you know, the podcast, I always start with your story. So it's an over to you, and you can tell it in as many words as you want.
Oh, this is funny, isn't it, Paul? How long have you got, eh? Well, I'd like to say I feel like I've got a positive story. I feel like I had a good start in life, and it's carried on from there. And when I say that, it might sound like I've never had any adversity. I'm sure I have, and I maybe I'll come to some of those just but I think a positive, I recognize I've always had a positive mindset. I don't know whether I was just born with it or whether it was nurtured. I'm really not sure. But I grew up, I was actually born in Scotland.
Okay.
Two parents were Irish and English, and then not long afterwards moved to Wales and grew up in Wales and went to a Welsh speaking school
Yeah.
and then followed through actually with that language theme and did languages and business at university, which was in Leeds.
Okay.
And then did a lot of traveling in that. I've always loved traveling. I still do love traveling. And my job then became head of, well, slowly built up to head of international for Silver Spoon, which is part of Associated British Food. So the brands you might recognize in there are Primark and Twinings and Kingsmill Bread. So I was really fortunate to have a career that spanned around 24 years in the food industry. And I was primarily in charge of international, so export markets, sales, strategy, market development, and latterly looked after everything really for Silver Spoon other than the mainstream retailers. So I was looking after food service, high street discounters, cash and carry, and then all the international division. And I feel very, very lucky to have worked with such in such a progressive company that
Yeah.
was so international. So it got lots of different opportunities there for personal development as well as working alongside some really inspiring people.
Yeah.
But in that, I got married somewhere around 20 years ago, and I got three children who are now aged 18, 16, and 13. And 6 years ago, so this is probably where it gets real, what real life's like. I was put at risk of redundancy.
Yeah.
And it probably came at a very good time because my work that I talked about was 3.5 hours away in the south of the UK, and I live in the north on the Wirral. And so the opportunity for redundancy came as obviously a shock because it's a very big change if you've been doing been in an industry, and I think your identity can be quite wrapped up in your role and
Yeah.
your career. But I quite quickly saw it as an opportunity for change and the opportunity to not be traveling away from the family, to be closer to home. And I guess that's where I got a real interest in coaching. So just before I was made redundant, we'd had an opportunity at work for some leadership training, and an external coach came in and did some role play with us. And in that role play, I had one of those light bulb moments where lots of lights go off in your head and you go, aha. And I realized that perhaps I had some room definitely to develop my coaching skills, but also my listening skills and questioning skills. And so when I was made redundant, I decided that that was one of the things I would invest in first of all, because it would serve me really well, both in a working life, but also in a home life in terms of communicating with my family and with others. So I embarked on a coaching course and then basically fell in love with coaching.
Yeah.
And with this background in strategy and business development, I created my own business plan and set up my own business 6 years ago, which is called For Positive Growth. And yeah, it's gone from there. It's evolved. You know, we hit COVID not long after. I had to adapt and pivot to that. And here we are, really, 6 years later.
Wow. So it's quite a nice story, isn't it, Dan? You've you know grown up in Scotland, then Wales, and then to have quite successful career to then be able to move into coaching. What would you say has been the biggest challenge during your career?
Um, so I think there's two things that come to mind, and I did think about mentioning that in the story, so as it doesn't all sound positive. I think when my daughter was quite young, and I was still working, obviously back and forth to down south for work, I found myself, even though I was normally a very positive person, whenever anybody would ask me, "How are you?" my answer would be instead, "I'm surviving." And I didn't really, I sort of heard what I was saying, but I didn't really hear and I didn't act on it. And nobody chose to explore why really quite suddenly I was giving quite a different answer. Anyway, the short version is um, I was obviously very, very stressed and probably burning out. And my daughter had actually had a very big, she'd needed a very big operation in Alderhay, and I'd been looking after her for 12 weeks. And there was a number of things still, working, looking after a young family,
Yeah.
carrying just too much load and not looking after myself. And I remember going to the doctors and them saying, we're all like rechargeable batteries, but if you let a rechargeable battery run so low, you it becomes very difficult to recharge it again. And he said, you need to take time out, you need to recharge, and you need to remember not to run your batteries so low. And so that's something I remember that's linked to life and career. And I think another one, there was quite a pivotal moment, was at when I was in the corporate world. I remember once in an appraisal, if you know what an appraisal is, it's when your boss gives you feedback on a period of time. This time it was a full year. And
Yeah.
I remember the managing director at the time giving me some feedback that said, Caroline, we really don't think you're going to break through the glass ceiling. You haven't got what it takes. Well, it at the time, I mean, clearly at the time, I wasn't very happy about that bit of feedback.
Yeah.
But this person in authority giving you that level of feedback, in many ways, if you have respect for them, you sort of think, okay, well, maybe they've got, that they've met a lot of people, they've worked with a lot of employees. I'm hearing what you're saying, and I must have really taken it on board and very deep inside. And it wasn't till years later when I was actually doing some NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which is something else
Yeah.
I've been involved in through coaching. I worked on this event in my life, thinking it was quite an insignificant thing actually, because we'd been asked to focus on an insignificant thing that we didn't think was going to be a big traumatic event. But clearly it had had a much bigger impact on me than I realized. And in this NLP session, I had a really huge adverse reaction to the session, which is, is not normal. I wouldn't want to put anyone off NLP. I think it's very powerful. But what I recognized was that the words of someone who I respected, that was, in effect, a leader, a boss, someone I respected, had had this deep, deep impact on probably my, we're going to talk about mindset today, my
Yeah.
mindset, my self-belief. And yeah, I remember it as quite a pivotal moment in my career that, without even knowing it, probably stopped me being at my best. But I'm pleased to say I've got over it, and I really feel like, well, actually, I don't believe there's a glass ceiling, so never mind breaking through it. There is no glass ceiling, and that can be absolutely in your mind, but it can be fed to you from others. So those are probably two events that come to mind.
Right, I'm with you. And it's amazing, isn't it? Because, obviously we do face challenges in our life and they shape us, but the impact of someone's words, and especially when it comes, as you said, from a person in a place of leadership or authority, you'll have some kind of respect for and how damaging it can be. But as you said, you've now come through that. So looking at mindset then, you're a coach, really successful coach. Why is mindset so important to you?
Well, I think back to what we just reflected on there about words. So the words others, how what we've grown up with in terms of the influences, the words, the environment around us can massively shape our own mindset, our beliefs, what's possible, what's not possible, and equally in that, how we speak to ourselves. So not only what we hear from external feeds, but also how we talk to ourselves can really, really shape our mindset. So I think for me, mindset is a lot about how we speak to ourselves and how our environment has shaped us and might continue to influence and shape our mindset now. But how we do genuinely, you know, I'd say 99.999% of the time, we've got a choice in how we respond to environment around us, but also we can change our own mindset if we want to.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. It's so easy, isn't it? Because I look at it and think, you open the curtains in the morning and it could be raining and
Mm,
you got the opportunity, haven't you, to react to that or respond. Reaction might be it's going to be a miserable day compared to the way I'm going to respond is I'll make the most of the day ahead of me, wear the right clothes, if you know what I mean, if I'm going out. And it is about choice, isn't it? The way that we think about life, from the moment that we wake up to the moment we go to bed, we've got a choice.
yeah. We do. And funnily enough, when you'd kindly invited me to join you today, I thought of that exact thing about when you first wake up in the morning, because there's a lot of research around, your mindset as you wake up can shape your whole day, because it can shape the filters that basically are set from the moment you wake up. As you said, you can open the window and think it's raining. You might say, oh no, that's it. What a disaster the day is going to be. I'm going to be wet. I'm going to be cold or whatever. Or you might say something like, oh, great. My plants are going to get a really good watering today. What a joy. And it can set your path off through the day in quite a different trajectory because it's like your mind is more open to the positives if you've started with that positive.
Absolutely. And I always look for the positives. As you just said, when it's raining, I think, well, that's going to help the grass.
Not that we're short of grass in the UK.
No, no, I know. So how would you then taking that, obviously mindset's important. How would you describe your own mindset?
So I said at the beginning, I would definitely say, as they say, I'm a glass half full girl, or nearly almost brimming and flowing over. I've always been very positive. I seem to see, if you can choose how to see a situation, I will see the opportunity in it. Um, and Yeah, maybe even, and that kept me going probably when those batteries were really, really low. you'll keep focusing on the positive and the gift, maybe we could call it. Um, yeah, I don't know where it's come from.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because for some people, it's kind of learned. For others, I think it is more innate. It does come more natural. But it's interesting you're talking about. You look at situations and you go, "What's the gift in this situation?" Or, if you just put your opportunity goggles on rather than looking for the negative. But some people they're just built that way. They just see the world in that way. And for me, I always think of mindset, and I know we know it can be developed. You can set your own
Yeah.
mindset at the end of the day, but it does seem to come more natural for some people over than others. Wouldn't you agree?
I would definitely agree. And there's plenty of research to back that up that we do have, and it's the same way as thinking about so more broadly than mindset. We all have natural tendencies in our style of thinking. So
Yeah,
some people will be particularly good at I'm sure you've heard of Edward de Bono's
yeah,
thinking hats. I think it's a really nice way of thinking how we all have different styles, but actually there's a value in flexing the style. So I think in Edward de Bono's book, The Yellow Hat is that positive, what's possible mindset, and equally there's a black hat that's what could go wrong here, what could be the negatives. And actually when we think of people working in teams or even as families, there is a value in having different perspectives. And if everybody had a really positive mindset and you were in a dangerous situation, perhaps you wouldn't have the breadth of perspective that would keep you all safe, just as an example. But the ability to flex mindset and between the hats is really, really key. So you can see from different perspectives,
yeah.
see what else is possible. So yeah.
Great advice. And on the basis of that being, that's a technique that you can use, obviously, to change your mindset, look at things from different perspectives. What type of tools or techniques do you use on top of that that you could share with the listeners?
So we talked earlier, didn't we? We just mentioned about what is the gift in the situation.
Yeah,
So I like to go to some questions that might help shift mindset.
yeah,
And I'm quite a big fan of positive intelligence, which is mental fitness coaching.
yeah,
And one of the tools in there is about looking for the gift. And, that's caveat with, of course, there's certain situations and very challenging events or traumatic events in life that of course it's really important to acknowledge the emotions that come with that. But it's often interesting to see that in moments of greatest challenge. For example, I think a lot about stories like the Southport, the three little girls in Southport that were stabbed, and actually from that, what is the good that then emerges from it? What people end up doing in order to, find, let's say, almost a gift
yeah,
in the situation in order to shift it from a totally negative situation to a positive. So sometimes even the worst situations, we can find or create a gift from it or something positive. But on a day-to-day level, as you said, we use the idea of opening the curtains and it's raining. And what could be the gift in rain? What's actually the opportunity here? Oh, actually, I can wear that raincoat that I don't get out very often, or I'm going to get to use that really colourful umbrella, or I'll make it a day when I do admin inside and I'll just enjoy being cozy inside. So, what actually could be another perspective on the situation that could be a positive one? So, what is the gift in the situation?
yeah. It's a really good way to reframe your mindset, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
I'm just going to the example that you used then, just before. I was at the Hillsborough disaster, back in 1989, and
Yeah.
for me, as a young boy at the time, I finally reframed what was my mindset around the fact that, it was quite a shocking experience, but where it got to was that I was one of the lucky ones, and every day life's been a gift for me. So I've always framed my life that way because of that experience. And you go, but it's because at some stage I've chosen to see the positive in it rather than to take the negative. So, it's just a similar example. I'm
Mm.
on the basis of, you mentioned that, you are naturally positive, naturally optimistic, you will naturally see the gift in things. That's kind of your mindset. And has it all just been innate, or has there been anybody at any point in time who's had an influence? Is there anything that you've read, anything that has helped you develop your mindset through the years?
Well, actually, I'll come back to positive intelligence because part of the developing your mental fitness is basically mindfulness practice. And in exploring mindfulness practice through the positive intelligence, um, you do lots of, you get encouraged to do lots of different exercises and activities that will boost your mental fitness.
Yeah.
And what I realized, so one might be that we stop for a moment when we're outside. We might go for a walk and we might stop and just look at something in detail. It might be a plant, it might be a leaf on a tree, it might be listening to a bird singing. Quite often, some of the things that we bypass. So even now in front of me, I've got a drink, which is a warm drink, which is actually a herbal drink, and it's got a scent, that we stop. And actually, simple activities like this, where
Yeah.
you really focus in on something rather than internally on your mind chatter, is actually boosting your mental fitness. And what was interesting for me, you asked, did anything boost, that mindset, or did I notice how I've developed it?
Yeah.
I'm naturally someone actually that's quite curious about the world. I will go outside and go, oh, look how green this leaf is, or look how pink this flower is,
Yeah.
or doesn't that bird sound like a really nice bird? And it wasn't until then I was practicing the mindfulness that I realized that actually what I was naturally doing in life was actually helping boost my mental fitness, allowing me, in effect, to stay in a more positive mental zone rather than slip into a more negative, stressed zone, let's call it, where you can perform at your best in that positive zone. So again, perhaps that's mine. Been born naturally curious, but that's certainly something any of us can develop, that mindfulness practice. It's not all, you don't have to sit for a long time. Literally a few seconds of just being mindful on something can boost your mental fitness and in turn help you shift into more positive ways of being and thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the lessons I learned is with the mindfulness is, at times I could walk and go for a walk, and sometimes I have my head down and not
Mm.
actually, and because you're thinking sometimes, you can either look up or you can look down. But actually it was quite energy zapping rather than, because when you do look up and when you take in everything around you, you just seem to get energy from it. It's like
Mm.
an openness. And I know for me, when I walk the dog and I make sure that I look around and take the trees in and take my surroundings in, and it's amazing how much energy it can give you, when you're being more mindful of everything around you. So that's it's really good advice. And I'll tell you something else that I was watching the other day. I watched a TED talk, and basically it was one about body language, and the lady was saying that when we sit in more power stances, we're more open, then actually what it does, it raises your testosterone and reduces cortisol. And the same is true if
Mm.
you to sit with your arms crossed and your head down and so forth, then the opposite's true. And it's amazing how just that's just body language, isn't it? So you go, if we're being more mindful in nature, how powerful and how good that can be for the body too.
Yeah, 100%. And as you were sharing that, I was thinking of gratitude. So also, you mentioned earlier how grateful you are every day that, as a result of the Hillsborough disaster, that you've realized how lucky you are to be alive. That gratitude practice, again, just, a few times a day or at the end of the day, thinking about what we've been grateful for in the day actually can really shift your mindset and your energy.
Definitely, definitely. Great advice. So on the basis of your career, I always ask, have you got any funny stories from, your travels or your career, your working life, that you could share with the listener?
Oh no. I mean, there's funny, isn't there? And there's also embarrassing. I mean,
I bet
I
plenty of embarrassing ones.
I have been around the world a lot of times, and there's stories about llamas spitting on me, falling asleep on planes because I was so exhausted from translating between Brazilian and Spanish and English back and forth while I was buying sugar in South America.
Wow.
Yeah, in at the end of that particularly busy week, having some caipirinhas, which is the typical drink of Brazil, and them having quite a obscene effect on me and not being able to get out of bed while I was in Rio de Janeiro. I mean, there's a lot of stories, and I suspect other people could tell some even better stories about me than I can.
That's
Uh,
it. It's sure it's been eventful with your travels because I do have those embarrassing we just have those embarrassing stories, don't we? Where I've fallen into the pool or whatever it might be, and you look back and you think, oh, does it only happen to me? And it doesn't. It happens to all of us, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's the funny stories, isn't it? Or the embarrassing moments, or the things at the time we go, oh no, I can't believe this has just happened, that become the stories we remember the best. Some of the rest of it, for me anyway, um, there's so much I can't remember, and so much I've done, but it's actually those moments of high emotion that we really remember. Another good one was we were we were traveling to Dublin, and myself and two other colleagues were catching a Ryanair flight back from Dublin. And we were sitting having something to drink before we were getting on the plane. And we hadn't realized that the walk from where we were having this drink to where the plane was leaving was a really long way. And so they must have said last call. And anyway, by the time we got to the gate of the plane, they'd closed it, and the plane was sitting outside, but they would not let us on this plane. So we looked at each other. It was like the last flight of the day, and we were like, "Oh no, we can't believe we've let this happen. There's the three of us. There's a cost, to the business for this."
Yeah.
Anyway, we got resourceful. We managed to get the airline to put us on the next day. That was fine. But of course, we had to stay somewhere for the evening. And I remember, we were thinking, well, we've got to save money here. So here's these three colleagues. We ended up staying in one room, and we weren't prepared. We probably even slept in our clothes because we didn't have anything that
Yeah.
we were expecting to stay away overnight. And the really funny bit of the story was as well that one of the colleagues, because we knew each other, but not that well.
Yeah.
And one of them said, I need to tell you both, I sleepwalk at night. Well,
No.
didn't we just find him trying to climb out the window in the middle of the night? I mean, we were not on the ground floor either. We were in a hotel room high up. So he tries to climb out the window. Anyway, we get back to the office and we go straight from the flight, straight into the office. And we think, phew, we've got away with this. Nobody knows any different. Doesn't the we had an in-house sort of travel rep at the time. He literally walks in the office and goes, "Oh, you three, what did you get up to last night, missing your flight?" So we were rumbled good and proper and never got away with that. So a small story, but all the funny
Oh,
things that you
it's a great stuff.
remember.
Let's have someone who sleepwalks as well. God, what a nightmare. So on the basis of concluding then, if you were to give one piece of advice around mindset to the listeners, what would it be?
Oh, just to recognize that it's possible to shift your mindset, and there's some tools out there that are quite simple tools and things that you can bring into your everyday life that really can help you shift. And I often think one small change can actually make a very, very big difference in your life. I talk a lot about the ripple effect, that you can change one small thing and it can have a really big impact on you, but also on those around you. That's the other important thing. So yeah, just believe it's possible to change, and that's my tip.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, thanks very much for coming on the podcast. It's been great listening to your story and obviously your insights as well. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Paul.